Okay. And so last week we talked about giving generously and how giving generously plays a big part in our financial situation. Three major areas that giving generously will affect. The first one is financially. We saw that video of the economists that got together with a psychologist, and they have all this data on people that give more get richer. And then we use some examples in the Bible how giving generously affects us physically and spiritually. Pastor Wayman Mitchell said this one time. He said, giving to God is not about buying a miracle. Giving is an opportunity to connect our money with God. And so when we give, I know sometimes it can sound like I say things like giving generously to God's house is the most effective investment that you can have, or giving generously will do certain things in your life. We have to have the right motives when we're giving. And Jesus shows us this in Luke 21 when he notices the widow that gave 2 mites and those that gave out of their abundance. There was no connection. It wasn't personal. And so that's something that we need to keep in mind when we're giving. Someone said this, in the Christian life, Christ is not a simple addition. He is the very foundation. Everything is built upon him. It isn't life plus Christ. It's life is Christ. And if we're going to want to grow financially, we're going to want to develop financially, God needs to be in the middle of our finances. I remember when we opened our produce company, one of the things that we decided to do was make world evangelism an expense. That means we have to pay our rent, we have to pay our employees, but somewhere in there we're going to put world evangelism because, like Pastor Mitchell says, we need these opportunities to connect our money, our businesses with God. And over time, my experience has been when you do this, God will move in your finances supernaturally. I remember that we got to a time where our businesses begin to grow, or our produce business begin to grow, and then the industry changed and volume just began to drop dramatically. And we had to make the decision, what are we going to do? Are we going to continue to connect our business with God, or are we going to retract? Are we going to say, you know what? God understands that things are different. And when we made that decision to keep our business connected to God, we saw our volume drop. That means we brought less loads from Mexico, but our profitability go up. In fact, our volume dropped by 50%, and our profitability went up by 50%. And this gives us the perfect illustration that when we keep this in mind, financially we will continue to grow. When you grow financially, God will give you opportunities to invest. And that's why we need these investment truths. Last week we talked about what happens when we don't have them, when we don't believe them or apply investment truths. We saw the illustration of the boy that goes in, or the kid that goes in with his dad to the bank to make a $10 million mistake. Him going in there, his dad helping him to buy a $100,000 car, eventually would cost him $10 million. Tom Ellsworth, he is an investor, entrepreneur, big business guy. He says this, words speak, but numbers, they scream. And so what is he trying to say? That we can't pull away from the truth about numbers. What we do with money, how we handle money, will have a truth, and that truth sometimes will scream. And so we also talked about last week, why do we need to invest? Is it just because we want to be rich? That's why we need to invest? No. There are some serious reasons of why we should be investing. And one of the biggest things is that our money loses value. Over time, it loses buying power. That's why you'll hear some people say things like, I'm just not making it anymore. Why? Because everything gets more expensive and our money is worth less. Investing also brings security to your family. I know wives would feel a lot more comfortable knowing that there's a plan in place to be able to take care of their family. So what are these investment truths? Before I start, I need to give out some scriptures. I guess we jetted over here from Serious Men, so who wants to help me read? I just have a few scriptures, okay, right here. Ecclesiastes 11:1, Proverbs 13:11, Irma. Ecclesiastes 11:2, Jimmy. Ecclesiastes 11:3, Sandra. Proverbs 11:14. I did this last week. Hold on. Richard, what's your wife's name? Jessica, yes. Okay, Jessica. I said Proverbs 11:14, right? Okay, Ecclesiastes 11:4. Richard, Ecclesiastes 11:6. I think that's my last one. Who else? Pastor Brandon? Okay. Awesome, thank you. Okay, so what are these investment truths? Go ahead and read, brother, Ecclesiastes 11:1. He's getting you the mic.
It says, cast your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days.
And so the New Living Translation, the NIV says it like this: ship your grain across the sea, after many days you will receive a return. So I believe that investment truth can be broken down into 4 different areas. And the first one is time. Investing needs time. Investors need to have the right perspective of what investing is. Wealth accumulation will happen over time and not overnight. Proverbs 13:11.
Dishonest money dwindles away, but whoever gathers money little by little makes it grow.
Whoever gathers little by little will make it grow. Time is one of the biggest elements in growing your investment. Nick Murray says this: giving your financial plan enough money and enough time will make building wealth inevitable. In other words, it will happen eventually if we allow enough time. Albert Einstein said this: mankind's greatest invention was compound interest. But for compound interest to work, we have to give it enough time. Anytime we're going to learn something, anytime we're going to do something different, we're going to grow and develop, there's going to be a learning curve. That means there'll be a certain amount of time needed for you to be able to grow and adapt and learn, and it's the same thing when it comes to investing. The second thing is risk. All investments will have risk. And a lot of times people will hear that and say, you see, that's why I shouldn't invest, because it's too risky. Ecclesiastes 11:2.
Invest in 7 ventures, yes, in 8. You do not know what disaster may come upon the land.
And so basically what this is diversification. To be able to limit your risk, you're going to have to diversify. And so this protects your investment. Basically, we've heard the statement a lot of times that says, don't put your eggs all in one basket. And that's what diversification is. Ecclesiastes 11:3.
If clouds are full of water, they pour rain on the earth. Whether a tree falls to the south or to the north, in the place where it falls, there it will lie.
And so when you hear this scripture, you can hear there's some things that are certain and there's some things that are uncertain. What we pay attention to should be the things that are certain and not uncertain. Could be the difference between calculating your risk in your investment and having blind risk. And so it says, if the clouds are full of water, they will pour out rain. That's evident. right? That's something that we know is true. When you're going to invest, you should never invest into something that you do not understand. You should always try to comprehend what you're investing into. This is reviewing track records. While you begin to understand the investment, you'll begin to see what type of volatility does it have. How much does this investment go up in value, come down in value? What type of return does this investment give me? And how do we understand this? The best way to understand this is by having an advisor, someone that's experienced in the type of investment that you're getting yourself into. Proverbs 11:14.
Where there is no counsel, the people fall, but in the multitude of counselors, there is safety.
In the multitude of counselors, there is safety. There is certain things that we do not do on our own. For some people, some things are more important not to do on their own. For some, there's other things not to do on their own, like changing your oil. I would never change my oil. There's people that say, no, I have to change my oil. That's something that I can do. But cutting our hair, doing our taxes, we can go on and on, right? Going to the doctor. There are certain things that we would never do on our own, and investing should be one of them. Having experts that are able to help us to reach our investment goals is key. And so all of our goals are different. We all view money differently. We're all going to view investing differently. We're going to have different priorities. And so a financial advisor, a financial coach, will help us to reach our independent personal goals. And so in the description, I'm actually going to put in there, to the YouTube video, I'm going to put in there a questionnaire that you can use to be able to interview a financial advisor or financial coach. And so it just gives you a bunch of questions on what you should be asking and what you should be looking for. And so I remember when I started having extra money, like I talked about, we come to church, we do what God's word says, we begin to give, and God begins to bless us. And now I have money. Now I want to go invest. I want to go multiply my money. And so I remember doing things without an advisor, taking this blind risk like I'm talking about, not calculated risk, not taking the right measures to make sure that our money is being multiplied properly, but just saying, hey, you know what? Here's an opportunity. I'm just going to take it because this is what I want to do. I want to grow financially. And one of the things that we did is we bought a restaurant. There was an existing restaurant that was working. Hey, we're going to buy this restaurant. Our family's been in the restaurant industry for 50 years here in the Valley. So for us, it was like, hey, it's just automatic. This is what our family does. We're going to have success. We didn't. Another opportunity came to me and says, hey, do you want to join us in importing dirt from a mine so that we could process it and pull out the minerals? And I'm like, man, that sounds like a great idea. It didn't go well. Because what happens when you make investment decisions on things that aren't certain, you speculate. You're assuming that certain things are going to happen, and when they don't, things normally go wrong. And so speculating is like gambling. And in our business, in our produce business, the markets will change every once in a while very quickly. And we look at these changes in the market as opportunities to make money. If we do this, we can make money. But when we speculate, that means we overextend ourselves on certain information or certain things that are happening. We start gambling. And when we do this, normally, we lose money. And so I'm just going to say, though, if you're gambling, that's going to bring a curse upon your finances. I see people do this. They think that, doing online gambling is no big deal and it's not going to affect them, but that's what I believe. I believe if you're gambling your money, your finances are going to be cursed. And so there's other ways to gamble, though, other than FanDuel and DraftKings and all that stuff. A lot of people get into investing by saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to do penny stocks. I'm going to trade currencies or cryptocurrency. Or I'm going to trade commodities. I know people that trade salt and just different commodities, right? And so when you start hearing about all these things, it's not that these industries don't make money. It's not that the people that are highly educated in these industries or these different ways of trading aren't effective. It's that there's so much that goes into doing this to be able to be profitable. And a lot of times when we're starting, we hear people, hey, you know what? They're making money like this. They're making money like this. You know, everybody wants to get into real estate to flip houses. They want to be the next Joanna Gaines and Chip and all that, right? But once you get into it, you realize, man, you can lose money very quickly. And so even though these areas you can make money, you have to do it with the right information. Like I said, there's a learning curve, there's advisors, there's different things that can help you so that you can be effective. So I say all that about risk, not to discourage anybody from investing, but to understand there's a way that we need to manage risk. We need to embrace it, not avoid it. Risk is a part of investing. Avoiding risk typically results in missing out on higher returns. And so we know that we have to live with the risk when we're investing. Ecclesiastes 11:4.
He who observes the wind will not sow, and he who regards the clouds will not reap.
And so what this is saying is that they look around at everything that is happening, currently happening, like right now, there's so much talk, right? With all these tariff wars and, man, we're going to go into a recession and there's so much talk. They look around at what's going on and they say, you know what? That's why I'm not going to invest. I'm just going to save my money because look at all the craziness that is happening. And so emotions play a big part in us investing. We pay attention to the what ifs of life. What if that happens? What if this happens? Successful investing requires emotional resilience and patience. Here it's talking about waiting for the perfect time to invest. The reality is that there will never be a perfect time. Those that want guarantees miss out on building wealth. Guarantees are saving your money. If you want a guarantee with your money, you put it away and it'll be there when you want it, when you go back to it. But that won't help you to build wealth. Our financial advisor says the second reason that people don't invest is because they feel they can't handle the emotional stress of investing. I remember during the pandemic, you know, we had already been in the real estate business for a little while, and we had a property that was under contract. We were going to close on it. It was a property that we had been looking at for like 7 years. And it was a great location. It was everything. The price was incredible. Somebody wanted to dump it. They didn't want it. And so we have it under contract. We're going to go in. We're going to sign, but the world's going crazy. It's the pandemic. You know, everything's shutting down. What's going to happen? And, you know, me and Imelda talked, and we're like, what do we do? What do we do? And we're just like, you know what? We chickened out. We said, nah, man, you know, we're gonna wait. We talked to the realtor, and we said, I think we're going to wait this one out because we don't know what's going to happen. And the realtor looked at me and told me, Robert, if you do not buy this property, you're going to regret it. And I said, man, I don't know. She was using a fear tactic on me, you know? It worked. I mean, I did regret it later. But we didn't buy this property because we were moved by fear. Our emotions took over us during that time. And if we're going to want to be effective financially or with our investments, we're going to have to set those emotions aside when we're investing. So fear causes people not to invest. Nick Murray says this, wealth is not primarily determined by investment performance. In other words, you're only going to become wealthy or build wealth because you have the perfect investment. You have the perfect investment product. He says, no, that's not true. He says, but it is determined by investor behavior. In other words, how we invest through these times is what's going to make the difference if we're able to accumulate or not. Ecclesiastes 11:6.
In the morning sow your seed, and in the evening do not withhold your hand, for you do not know which will prosper, either this or that, or whether both alike will be good.
And so what this is saying is that our habits will determine how effective we will be with our investment. Consistency plays a big part. I remember my financial advisor, Ray Villada, used to tell me, there is a difference between time in the market and timing the market. A lot of people want to invest. They want to grow their money. But like I said, they're looking for that perfect opportunity. Hey, you know what? I'm going to time it. I'm going to come in perfect. I'm going to wait till Bitcoin drops to 40,000 a coin, and then I'm going to invest, and then Bitcoin's going to go to 250,000, and I'm going to make it big. Well, that's not a proven track record. People that try to time the market very, very, very rarely are effective with their investments. Successful investors invest consistently over long periods of time. So it has to do with our habits. Priority. When we make investing our priority, we'll be effective. This is why the book, The Automatic Millionaire, is so effective, because it talks about prioritizing investing, prioritizing your contributions will give you the best result. They put investing way up there with giving, saving, investing, and then all the other responsibilities. And these are the people that have the best results. Setting up monthly withdrawals, putting it before conveniences or recreation. This will help us to reach our investing goals. The other thing is simplicity, keeping things simple. A lot of times people think that their investment strategy needs to be complicated so that they could be more effective. The guys that are more complicated, more sophisticated, these are the guys that make big money. But the reality is keeping it simple will be effective. I remember after a while of doing this, having a financial advisor, I remember looking at him and saying, you know what? This guy, he's just an older guy. He's got a small shop. He can't be giving me everything that I need out of investing. So what did I do? I started looking around for better options, going around to banks and investment firms, looking for wealth management departments, because that sounds, better. It sounds like they're going to be more effective with your money, right? And after being there for many years, I didn't get any value out of that. In fact, I saw that percentage-wise, our investments made less money. Now I realize how important it is to keep things simple. Every investment will have a maintenance on it. That means time, energy. This is taking up mental space. And what you want is to have the lowest amount of maintenance on your investment. Okay. Somebody asked this. How does a person between the age of 40 and 50 start investing? Warren Buffett said this: the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. And so if you haven't started and you're a little older, that shouldn't discourage you. You still have the ability to multiply your money. We have those slides, right? Go ahead and show the first slide, the 53. So this is someone at the age of 50 that says, hey, I'm going to start investing $100 a month until retirement. This calculator does 67. This is what you would contribute. You would contribute $20,000, $20,400, but you would have $53,000, right? And so you look at that and say, well, what am I going to do with $53,000? It's not a big deal. Well, it's better than having $20,000, right? You're still multiplying your money. You're still trying to grow your money. Show the next one. This is the same illustration, but you started at the age of 20. And so $100 a month at the age of 20, and at the age of retirement, 67, you've got almost $1.3 million, right? And so this gives us the understanding that the sooner we start is better, but we should still, if we haven't started, It shouldn't discourage us. We should still start doing this because we'll still have the opportunity to multiply. And now you can look at stuff like this, thank you, and you can say, hey, you know what? Well, I can do more than $100. And so therefore your results will be better. The other question was, what type of investment will give me the fastest growth in the next 10 to 20 years? And so this is really interesting because no matter the age, your capital that you have to invest will basically limit your investment opportunities. Everybody's different. Everybody has different goals. Like I mentioned, your investment strategy is based on your goal, on your capital. We're going to get into explaining what mutual funds are right now in a minute. But having the right financial advisor will help you to reach that. And so the next thing I want to talk about is ways to invest. A lot of times people are thinking, where am I going to put my money so that it can multiply? I want to make the most money. But the best investment you can make is in yourself. Jim Rome said this, learn to work harder on yourself than on your job. If you work hard on your job, you will make a living. If you work hard on yourself, you can make a fortune. And so a simple $20 book can expand your mind and give you the capacity to continue to grow. So it's very important to educate ourselves. Now, this is kind of different than what we've been seeing, these investment models, but a way to invest is to start a side business or a side job. This gives you the ability to multiply your efforts and multiply your money. When you think about this, though, keep three things in mind. The first thing when starting a business or a side hustle or side gig or whatever is there's money, education, and labor. Those are the three, you could say, are the three main components when you're starting a business. And when I wanted to start generating more money because of a lack of education, I had to look at these other two components. Well, I have no education, so therefore there's labor and there's money. Well, I didn't have money either. So the next thing was labor, right? So there's certain businesses or side jobs that you can start that take little to no money, no education, and a lot of labor. These are things like cutting grass, lawn service, cleaning pools, cleaning windows, cleaning houses. These are all things that help people or convenience people, but you're able to start a business. You know, one of the companies that we use to clean a residential property that we have has 500 properties that they clean. They have 10 3-person crews. They have 10 vans. And this is not what you're thinking about when you think about housekeeping. But they've taken this idea and they've scaled it and they've been able to make a very profitable business doing this. The second thing is a trade. This requires a little bit of education, a little bit of money, but when you get this education, it's a lot easier for you to grow financially. And then there's a lot of money or a lot of education, right? They just asked the question, how do we invest if we're in our 40s or 50s? Well, how much money do you have to invest? That is going to be determined on what you can do, what your capacity is, how much time do you have to put into this investment. If you have no time to put into the investment, then your investment opportunities are limited. You have very little money, your investment opportunities are limited. And so that's important to consider. You know, my stepdad, he worked for an oil and gas company all his life. When you looked at him, he looked poor. He wore old Wranglers that, you know, were dirty, Western shirts, boots, all the time, every day, that's all he wore. And when he would spend money, he bought whatever he wanted. You thought that he wasn't being frugal and all that, but what he was doing on the back end is he was investing more money than the average employer at his job. And in his 50s, he got sick. He fell, he broke his hip, and they found out he had cirrhosis of the liver. He was a drinker. And so when they found out he had cirrhosis of the liver, he had to stop working. But when he stopped working, he never had a money problem. His house was paid for, his cars were paid for. He passed away young. He left my mother everything paid for, money in the bank, hundreds of thousands of dollars, because he was investing his money. And so where did he invest his money? Mutual funds, like Angel was talking about. He worked for a good company that gave him an opportunity to invest his money, and he maximized that opportunity. So I want to share with you, dang, it's already 10:45. Okay, I'm going to try to, I don't know if I'm going to be able to go through this. Okay, so I'm going to share with you, go ahead and do the mutual fund slide. So this is what a mutual fund is. It's investors, they pool their money together, and what they do is they give that to a fund manager. Okay, a fund manager would be somebody, sometimes we hear advertisements like Fidelity, Vanguard, American Funds, Franklin Templeton, Edward Jones, those kind of guys, right? Those are fund managers. And being able to put your money in a mutual fund gives you the opportunity to be an owner, not a loaner. And so a loaner lends money to the bank. That's what you do when you put your money in a savings account. That's what you do when you buy a bond or you put your money in a CD. You're loaning money. That's why the interest rate, the return rate is very low. This gives you an opportunity to be an owner. It gives you an opportunity to buy securities. And what are securities? Securities are stocks, bonds, and then you have different things like commodities and different things. So the fund manager takes all this money. Let's say everybody in this room wants to invest. We all want to put in $100. The fund manager takes all our money and then he buys securities. And so this is the way that Ray would explain it to me. So it's like this bundle of pencils, right? And so they buy all these securities. And why do they do this? We talked about it in the investment truths, right? Because of diversification. What happens when one of these companies is going bad? The possibility for it to break is very easy, right? It can break because the value goes down, you can lose your money. If you have all your money invested in just one company, it's very easy for you to lose your money. But the reason that they do that, they put our money in securities, they buy hundreds of companies. They're monitored. You have professionals. Sometimes these fund managers have 4 or 5 people just working on one type of fund, one type of investment model. There's about 5 experts that are just watching all these companies and saying, hey, when are we going to sell this? Are we going to buy more? Is there a better company to trade out? And so that's what it is. That's what securities is. And this is what we do when we invest into mutual funds. Our investment is much stronger, because it's bundled up. And sometimes they'll have things that are safer, and sometimes they'll have things that are very, very risky. So then what happens when, wow, it got messy. What happens when we, can you put that slide up? What happens when we buy the securities? It generates 2 things. It generates a return, a positive return, or a negative return, right? The idea of the diversification is that it's more probable for you to have a positive return, and then that goes back to the investor. How compound interest works and how you're so effective with this type of investment is you continue to invest your profits, and that gives you a great return. And so Nick Murray said this: playing around with investment principles won't make you financially successful. You must come all the way in, or you may as well stay all the way out. In other words, if you're not going to apply the things that are going to help you grow your money when it comes to investing, then you might as well not do it at all. Because what happens when people start investing and then stop? They put their money into something and then they get scared. They use the wrong money to invest. Money that should be saved, they put it into an investment. And then when they need it, they pull it out. And then they lose the opportunity to make money, or the investment, because it fluctuates, it's now worth less when you're pulling it out. And so either we're all in, or it's probably better that we shouldn't mess with it at all. I talked about this, I think it was in the last Sunday school, that how I made $1 million mistake. How I sold a property too soon because I didn't have or applied the investment truths. What I've learned over time is that if you stay consistent, if you commit your finances to God, your financial situation to God, God can turn that around. God can help you. God will teach you, and you can learn. You know, when I sold that property too cheap, I turned around and invested it into another property. And that property ended up appraising over time 3 times more than what we paid for it. What God was telling me when that happened was, you may not know everything that you're doing. You may make some mistakes along the way. But as long as you stay connected to me, I'm going to help you grow, and I'm going to help you advance. And so I'm going to stop right here. We have a couple more minutes. Does anyone have any other questions or comments? Okay, go ahead.
It was a couple. It was some years ago that you did like a financial, also like this one.
Class.
But it was a little one, and then we talked afterwards, and then my husband was telling you that we were giving our house payment $50 more, you know, like, or something like that, and you told us, like, if you were to lose your job, the mortgage company is not going to say, oh, well, you were giving $50 more, so we're not going to take you out of your house. And you told us, if you have those $50 extra that you don't need and you're putting them in your house, why not put it in? So we started doing that, and we just put it there because those $50, I mean, we were not doing nothing with them, just giving them more to the house. And now we, you know, like ever since then, it's been growing a lot. We don't even look at it or nothing, but we're waiting, you know, like, so it was a good investment.
Yeah, I think at the time what I was trying to explain is that if you send a partial payment extra to your home, you lose control of that money because now you've just reduced the amount of money you owe the mortgage company. But if you take that same money and invest it, then you still have control over the money. If something happens, you lose your job, you lose your house, all those things, there's still that extra money that you had, you were investing it and it grew. That's why investing into mutual funds is such a great, or gives us such a great opportunity, because it creates liquidity. The more that you have invested into cash assets or liquid assets, the better it is. Usually when you invest into these types of investments, you can get your money out within 2 to 3 days. And if you invest in other things, especially things that have high volatility, you don't have that same opportunity, especially if you invest into real estate or businesses or those types of things. It'll take you a long time to be able to get that back.